Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Books Summary Podcast. Sometimes you read a book and it just flips the script on how you think about things.
Yeah, for sure.
And today, we're diving deep into one of those books. It's called Be Your Future Self Now by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Have you heard of it?
I have, yeah. It's a really interesting take on personal growth. It's not about dwelling on the past or even focusing on the present. It's all about letting our future selves pull us forward.
Okay, so we're talking about like time travel.
Not exactly time travel. It's more about recognizing that the person we want to become in the future has a powerful influence on our actions today.
Got it. So it's less about going back to the future and more about letting the future come to us.
You could say that. It's about tapping into the power of our future selves to create a more fulfilling life.
I like that. And I know a lot of our listeners are really into personal growth, so I think they're going to love this deep dive. Before we get too far into it, though, I wanted to remind everyone to hit that subscribe button and give us a like if you're enjoying the show. It really helps us out. Okay, so let's talk about Be Your Future Self Now. What's the core idea of the book?
Well, it's rooted in recent psychological research. There's been a real shift in the field from focusing solely on past traumas to understanding what makes humans flourish.
So it's not just about fixing what's broken. It's about reaching our full potential.
Exactly. And Be Your Future Self Now taps right into that. It argues that by connecting with our future selves, we can unlock incredible motivation, creativity, and resilience.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this could be really powerful. But I'm also thinking, how do we actually connect with our future selves? These seem kind of far away and hard to grasp.
Well, the book starts with a pretty compelling story about Mr. Beast, the YouTube phenomenon, Jimmy Donaldson.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Beast. He's the guy who does those crazy stunts and giveaways, right? I have my kids watch his videos all the time.
That's him. So back in 2015, when he was just starting out on YouTube, he created these future self videos. He outlined his goals for 6 months and 5 years down the line.
Okay, so he was setting goals. A lot of YouTubers talk about goal setting. What was different about Mr. Beast's approach?
Well, his goals were pretty ambitious. His 6-month goal was to hit 15,000 subscribers, but he ended up hitting 200,000 in just a year.
Wow, that's impressive. He crushed his goal.
And his 5-year goal was to reach 1 million subscribers. By the time the book was written, he had over 82 million.
82 million subscribers in 5 years. That's insane. What can we learn from his story?
The book suggests that Mr. Beast's future self videos weren't just about setting goals. They were about making his future self tangible and real. He visualized his success and shared it with the world. It's like he set the coordinates on his internal GPS.
I like that analogy. So it's not enough to just have a goal in our minds. We need to make it real, almost like we're already living it.
Exactly. By embodying the version of ourselves that has already achieved our goals, we create a powerful roadmap to success.
That makes a lot of sense. But I imagine there are obstacles that can prevent us from connecting with that future self, right?
Oh, absolutely. The book calls them threats, and I think we should explore those next.
Okay, I'm a bit nervous to hear what these threats are, but I'm also curious. Hit that subscribe button if you're feeling brave and want to join us on this journey. So, what's the first threat to our future selves?
The first threat is losing meaning in the present because we lack hope for the future.
That sounds like a recipe for despair. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Well, the book uses a powerful example, Viktor Frankl's experiences in Nazi concentration camps.
Wow, that's a heavy example.
Despite enduring unimaginable suffering, Frankl observed that those who held on to a sense of purpose, a vision for their future, were more likely to survive.
So even in the darkest of circumstances, having something to look forward to, a glimmer of hope for the future, can make all the difference.
Exactly.
It's like that hope becomes a lifeline, pulling them through the darkness.
And it's not just about surviving extreme situations. It's about finding meaning and purpose in our everyday lives. When we have a vision for our future, even a simple one, it gives us a reason to get out of bed in the morning.
It's like that purpose fuels our actions, gives us direction.
And when we lack that sense of purpose, it's easy to feel lost, unmotivated, even depressed.
That makes a lot of sense. I think we've all felt that way at some point in our lives.
Yeah.
So having a vision for the future, even if it's not perfectly clear yet, can help us stay grounded and motivated.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got to cultivate hope for the future. What's the second threat to our future selves?
The second threat is letting a negative narrative about our past limit our future.
No, I think we've all been there. We all carry baggage from the past, right? Past failures, heartbreaks, even traumas. How do we prevent those experiences from dictating our future?
The book emphasizes the power of reframing those narratives. It's not about pretending bad things didn't happen, but it's about choosing how we interpret them and how we let them shape our future.
So it's about taking control of the story we tell ourselves about our past. Do you have an example of what that looks like in practice?
Sure. The author shares a personal story about a car accident he was in when he was 16.
That must have been terrifying.
It was, and it could have easily defined his life in a negative way. But with the help of an empathetic police officer, he was able to reframe the event. He realized that he had choices in how he responded to the situation, even though it was a traumatic experience.
That's incredible. So even in the face of trauma, we have the power to choose how we interpret the experience and how we let it shape us.
Exactly. And the story goes even further. The author's mother, despite suffering severe injuries from the accident, also chose to view the experience with gratitude.
Wow, that's powerful. It's like she transformed her pain into a source of strength.
It solidified her purpose in life and amplified her compassion for others. So even though the accident was a negative event, it ultimately led to positive growth and transformation.
That's truly inspiring. It highlights the importance of choosing our perspective, even when faced with challenging circumstances.
It's a powerful reminder that we have more control over our narratives than we might realize.
This is such good stuff. Don't forget to like this video if you're finding this deep dive as eye-opening as I am. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of hope for the future and reframing our past narratives. What's the third threat to our future selves?
The third threat focuses on the power of our environment. It's about recognizing that our surroundings shape who we become.
Oh, I've heard that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Exactly. It's like we're chameleons adapting to the colors of our environment. If we surround ourselves with negativity, it's going to rub off on us. But if we surround ourselves with positive, supportive people, we're more likely to thrive.
So if we want to change, we need to change our environment.
It's a good place to start. The book actually references the Pygmalion effect. It's this fascinating study where teachers were told that certain students were gifted, even though they were randomly selected.
Right.
Yeah. And guess what? Those students ended up performing better academically simply because their teachers believed in them.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Hmm.
If people believe in us, we're more likely to believe in ourselves and reach our potential.
Exactly. And it's not just about the people we surround ourselves with. It's also about the information we consume, the experiences we expose ourselves to. Everything in our environment is shaping us, whether we realize it or not.
So if we want to become our future selves, we need to create an environment that supports that vision.
Precisely.
I'm starting to get so many actionable takeaways from this deep dive. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future episodes.
I'm glad you're finding it valuable.
Okay, so we've covered 3 threats so far. Lack of future hope, a negative past narrative, and a disempowering environment. What's the 4th threat we need to be aware of?
The 4th threat is a little more internal. It's being disconnected from your future self.
Disconnected from our future selves. What does that even mean?
It's about living in the moment without considering the long-term consequences of our actions. Like, we get so caught up in instant gratification that we lose sight of the bigger picture.
Ouch. I think we've all been there. I know I've made some short-sighted decisions in my past that I regret. How do we bridge that gap and connect with our future selves more effectively?
The book suggests a simple but powerful practice. Make your future self more vivid.
Okay, so like hire a psychic to give us a glimpse into the future.
That could be fun. But there's a more accessible approach. The book suggests writing a letter from your future self to your current self.
Ooh, I like that. What kind of things would our future selves tell us?
Anything that makes your future self feel real. Imagine yourself 5 years from now. What have you achieved? What do you value? What advice would you give your younger self?
That's powerful. It's like having a conversation across time with the wisest version of ourselves.
Exactly. And by putting ourselves in our future selves' shoes, we make them more tangible, which can significantly influence our present choices.
I'm definitely going to try that tonight. Hit that like button if you're planning to write a letter to your future self, too. Okay, so we've got to connect with our future selves, make them real. What's the 5th threat we need to be aware of?
The 5th threat is about getting stuck in the cycle of urgent tasks and small goals.
Oh, that's me. My to-do list is a monster.
Yeah.
How do we escape that trap?
The book calls it a cycle of urgent battles. We get so caught up in fighting fires that we never stop to think about what we're actually fighting for.
We're so busy being busy that we forget about our bigger goals.
Exactly. And the book uses this interesting analogy from the film In Time, where everyone is desperately scrambling for minutes to survive, they literally don't have enough time to actually live their
That's a
lives.
chilling analogy. It's like we're all running on a treadmill, but we're not actually getting anywhere.
And this type of short-term thinking can really keep us stuck. We need to shift our focus from the immediate to the long term, aligning our actions with the vision we have for our future selves.
So we need to break free from the tyranny of the to-do list and start thinking bigger. Before we move on, let me remind everyone to subscribe to the channel for more deep dives like this. What's the next threat we need to be aware of?
The sixth threat resonates with a famous quote from Theodore Roosevelt. He said, "The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood."
Oh, I love that quote. It's about embracing challenges and not being afraid to get her hands dirty, right?
Exactly. The book emphasizes that not being in the arena of action is essentially failing by default. Staying on the sidelines, overthinking, and letting fear paralyze us is far more damaging than taking action and potentially failing.
Because if you never swing the bat, you'll never hit a home run.
That's a great analogy. And the book argues that failing in the arena is actually a learning experience. When we're in the game, we're learning, adapting, and growing. Even if we stumble, we gain valuable experience that propels us forward.
So it's about taking that leap of faith and trusting that we'll figure it out along the way.
Right.
Do you have an example of someone who embodies this man in the arena mentality?
The book highlights Tom Brady, the football quarterback.
Tom Brady, yes, yeah, he's considered one of the greatest, right?
By many, yes. But he wasn't a superstar from the start. He faced constant criticism and had to fight for his position. But he never shied away from the challenge, and his perseverance ultimately led to unprecedented success.
That's inspiring. It shows how embracing the arena, even with the risk of failure, can lead to extraordinary results.
It's about having the courage to show up and give it our all, even when we're not sure of the outcome.
Okay, so we've got to step into the arena and be willing to face challenges head on. I'm curious about the seventh and final threat. What is it?
This one might surprise you. Success itself can often be the catalyst for failure.
Wait, what? How can success be a bad thing?
It's not that success is inherently bad, but it can lead to complacency and distraction.
Ah, I see. It's like the saying, it's harder to stay at the top than it is to get there.
Exactly. We achieve a certain level of success, and then we start to coast. We lose our focus, our drive, and before we know it, we're slipping back down the ladder.
So it's like success can bring new challenges and temptations that we need to be prepared for. What's the key takeaway here?
The book refers to this as the clarity paradox. When we're starting out, we often have laser focus. But as we achieve success, new opportunities emerge, and it becomes easier to get sidetracked or lose sight of our core vision.
It's like trying to juggle too many balls at once. You end up dropping them all.
Exactly. So even when we're successful, it's important to stay true to our core vision, to those things that truly matter.
Okay, so we've got to be vigilant, stay focused, and avoid the trap of getting distracted by the allure of success. This has been an incredible deep dive into the threats that could sabotage our journey to becoming our future selves.
There's a lot to be mindful of.
But don't worry, the book also provides us with the tools to overcome these threats, and we're going to explore those in our next episode. So be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this deep dive into Be Your Future Self Now. We'll be back soon to explore the 7 powerful truths that can empower us to become the people we aspire to be.
Welcome back, everyone. Are you ready to dive into some solutions?
I am. Our last episode left me a little worried about all those threats. What can we do to make sure we're on the right path to becoming our future selves?
That's what we're going to explore today. The good news is, Be Your Future Self Now doesn't just point out the problems. It offers some powerful antidotes. It lays out 7 truths that can help us overcome these obstacles and achieve our goals.
7 truths. All right, lay them on me. What's the first truth?
The first truth challenges a pretty common idea, this notion that we're just products of our past. It says your future actually drives your present, even subconsciously.
Wait, are you saying our past doesn't matter?
Not exactly. Our past experiences definitely shape us. But this truth emphasizes that our future aspirations have a much stronger pull than we might realize.
Okay, I'm listening. But how does that work? Like, how can my future self influence me today?
Think about it this way. Our desires for the future are constantly shaping our behaviors in the present, even if we're not consciously aware of it.
So it's like my subconscious mind is already working towards my goals, even if I haven't fully acknowledged them yet.
You got it. It's like building a house. You wouldn't just start nailing boards together randomly and hope it turns into a house. You'd have a blueprint, a vision of the finished product, and that vision would guide every step of the process.
I see what you're saying. So our aspirations are like the blueprint for our lives, guiding our choices even before we consciously make them.
Right on. And this applies to every area of life, from our relationships to our careers, our health, even our habits.
So we're not just reacting to our past, we're being pulled forward by our future.
Exactly.
That's a pretty mind-blowing concept. It makes you realize the importance of being intentional about the future we want to create, doesn't it?
For sure. And that brings us to the second truth. Your future self will be different than you expect.
Hold on. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the idea that my subconscious is building my future. Now you're saying the future of me will be a totally different person.
Not a completely different person, but likely different than you might imagine right now. You know, there's this thing called the end of history illusion.
The end of history illusion? What is that?
A psychologist named Dr. Daniel Gilbert did some really interesting research on how people envision their future selves, and he found that people tend to underestimate how much they'll change over time. They acknowledge that they've grown and evolved in the past, but then they assume the next 10 years will be pretty much the same.
So we recognize that we've changed, but we don't anticipate future growth. We think we've reached our final form.
Exactly. And that can really limit our potential, because we might make choices based on who we are today, not considering who we might become in the future.
It's like we're putting a ceiling on our own growth without even realizing it.
The book connects this back to mindset. You know, people with a fixed mindset believe that their qualities are set in stone. They are who they are, and that's it. But those with a growth mindset believe they can learn, evolve, and develop new skills throughout their lives. They see themselves as a work in progress, always becoming.
So embracing a growth mindset is essential for becoming our future selves. It's about seeing possibilities instead of limitations.
You got it. And speaking of possibilities, the third truth uses a really interesting analogy from a classic story. It says your future self is the Pied Piper.
Pied Piper? You mean the guy who lured all those rats out of town with his magical flute?
The one and the only.
What does that have to do with our future selves?
Remember what happened when the townspeople refused to pay the Pied Piper for his services?
He led all their children away as revenge.
Exactly. So it's a story about consequences and accountability, right?
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Huh.
It's like we're constantly making deals with our future selves, and if we don't hold up our end of the bargain, there will be consequence.
You got it. Every choice we make, every action we take is either an investment in our future selves or a debt that we'll have to pay later.
So if we invest wisely in our health, our skills, our relationships, our future selves will reap the rewards.
Exactly.
But if we make bad choices, procrastinate, or neglect our well-being, we're essentially creating problems for our future selves to deal with.
Right. It's like we're borrowing from our future happiness to pay for our present indulgences. And eventually, that debt comes due.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah.
It makes you realize the importance of making wise choices today, knowing that we're not just impacting our present selves, we're shaping the reality of our future selves.
Exactly. And that sense of responsibility brings us to the fourth truth, which is the more vivid and detailed your future self is, the faster you'll progress towards your goals.
So it's not enough to just have vague dreams. We need to create a crystal clear picture of our future selves.
Exactly. The book emphasizes the power of clarity and visualization. There's this great story about the author's son, Caleb, who was a talented tennis player but struggled to achieve consistent results in tournaments.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about Caleb.
So Caleb's coach challenged him to set a specific goal. He wanted him to raise his universal tennis ranking, or UTR, to a 3. That would qualify him for a really prestigious tennis academy.
I see. So instead of just wanting to be good at tennis, he had a very specific and measurable goal.
Right. And then he and his father started researching the UTR system. They looked up the rankings of other players, really visualized what it would take for Caleb to reach that goal.
So it was more than just practicing more. It was about having a really clear vision of what success looked like.
You got it. And as that vision became clearer, Caleb's motivation and commitment increased. He started making different choices. He prioritized his training, and eventually, he achieved his goal.
That's awesome. It shows that having a vivid vision can really make a difference.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that we need to create that clarity for ourselves. What are those specific, measurable goals that will help us become our future selves?
I love this. Okay, so we've got to get clear on our vision, make our future selves vivid. What's the fifth truth we need to keep in mind?
The fifth truth might seem a bit counterintuitive at first. It says that failing as your future self is better than succeeding as your current self.
Wait a minute, why would we want to fail? Isn't the whole point to succeed?
It's not about intentionally seeking out failure, but it's about recognizing that setbacks and challenges are essential for growth. If we only do things we're already good at, we're not really pushing ourselves to become our future selves.
So it's about taking risks, stepping outside our comfort zone, even if it means we might stumble along the way.
Exactly. The book tells the story of Josh Waitzkin. He's pretty amazing. He was a chess prodigy and then also became a world champion in Tai Chi.
Wow, a chess prodigy, A&D, a Tai Chi champion. This guy must be a genius.
He's definitely incredibly talented, and he attributes his success to something he calls investing in loss.
Investing in loss, what does that mean?
He would intentionally seek out training partners who were more skilled than him. He'd put himself in situations where he knew he was going to lose.
Wow, I wouldn't have the courage to do that.
But he saw those losses as investments in his future growth. He was learning from the best, adapting to a higher level of competition, and it ultimately accelerated his development.
So he was deliberately losing in order to win bigger in the long run.
Exactly. And this applies to all areas of life. If we want to grow, we need to embrace challenges, even if they lead to some setbacks. Those failures can actually be stepping stones on the path to becoming our future selves.
I love that. It takes the sting out of failure, makes it a part of the process. Okay, so we need to be willing to fail, embrace those challenges. What's the sixth truth we need to be aware of?
The sixth truth is all about defining success on our own terms. It says, true success is achieving the goals of your future self, not just what society deems successful.
That really resonates with me. Society's definition of success can feel so empty sometimes. It's all about money, status, and external validation.
The book challenges us to think differently. It encourages us to ask ourselves, what kind of legacy do I want to leave behind? What brings me true joy and fulfillment? What does success look like for my future self?
It's about creating our own definition of success, one that's aligned with our values and aspirations.
Exactly. And the book cautions against falling into the trap of what it calls a shadow career.
A shadow career, what's that?
It's when we pursue a path that doesn't align with our true passions and aspirations. We might achieve those external markers of success, the money, the status, the recognition, but we're not truly fulfilled.
It's like we're living someone else's life instead of our own.
Exactly. And the book actually uses the example of Adolf Hitler. It's a pretty chilling example. He dreamed of being an artist, but was rejected from art school. And instead of finding another way to pursue his passion, he abandoned it. And obviously, we know how that turned out.
That's a powerful example of how a shadow career can lead to unfulfilled potential and even really destructive choices.
It's a reminder that we need to stay true to ourselves even when we face setbacks or rejection. It's about finding a path that aligns with our values and passions, even if it's not the conventional path.
Okay, so we've got to define success on our own terms and pursue a path that's true to ourselves. What's the seventh and final truth?
The seventh truth might surprise some listeners. It says that your view of God impacts your future self.
Whoa, that's a big topic. How does the book approach such a personal and complex issue?
The book acknowledges that there are countless views of God and spirituality, and it doesn't try to push any one belief system. Instead, it explores how different perspectives on God can influence our sense of purpose, our understanding of our own potential, and ultimately, the choices we make.
So it's less about dogma and more about how our beliefs shape our vision of ourselves and our future.
Right. The book encourages us to examine our own beliefs and ask ourselves, does my view of God limit or empower me? Does it support my growth and aspirations? Or does it hold me back?
That's a really powerful question. It's about aligning our spirituality with our aspirations, finding a belief system that fuels our journey toward becoming our future selves.
Exactly.
This has been such a fascinating exploration of the threats and truths surrounding our future selves. I feel like my mind is blown wide open.
I'm glad to hear that. But we're not done yet. The book doesn't just leave us with these big ideas. It also provides some practical steps we can take to actually bridge the gap between who we are now and who we aspire to be.
Okay, I'm ready for some action. Before we dive into those steps, let me remind everyone to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this deep dive into Be Your Future Self Now. We'll be back in a moment to explore those 7 steps and unlock the incredible potential within each of us. Welcome back, everyone. I'm so ready to put all of this incredible insight into action. We've explored the threats that can kind of sabotage our journey and the truths that can really empower us. But how do we actually get there? How do we bridge that gap between who we are now and who we want to become?
Well, that's where Be Your Future Self Now gets really practical. It lays out 7 specific steps we can take to start living as our future selves today.
Okay, let's jump right in. What's step number 1?
Step 1 is to define your contextual purpose for the next few years.
Contextual purpose.
Mhm.
That sounds a little different than just finding our purpose in life. What does that mean?
Yeah, a lot of people get caught up in trying to find this one grand, overarching purpose for their entire lives. But this book encourages us to think a bit differently.
Okay, how so?
It's not about this perfect, unchanging destination. It's about identifying a specific goal, something meaningful that will really drive your actions for the next few years, something to aim for.
So it's more like setting a direction, like a North Star to guide us.
That's a great way to put it. And it can evolve over time.
Ah, so it's okay if we change our minds down the road.
Absolutely. That's the beauty of it. The book calls it contextual because it recognizes that our purpose can change as we grow and our priorities shift.
That takes a lot of pressure off. It's not about finding the right purpose. It's about choosing something that feels meaningful right now.
Exactly. And it's okay if it's a little fuzzy at first. The important thing is to choose a direction and start taking action.
So just start moving. I like it. What's the second step to being our future selves?
Step 2 is all about creating focus. It's about eliminating all those lesser goals to make space for what truly matters.
Uh-oh. This is where I struggle. My to-do list is a mile long.
Yeah.
How do we decide what to let go of?
It can be tough, for sure. The book emphasizes the importance of ruthless prioritization
Ruthless. Wow.
because every time we say yes to one thing, we're implicitly saying no to something else.
Right. Our time and energy are limited.
Exactly. So we need to be very intentional about what we choose to focus on. The book suggests a helpful exercise. Imagine that your current self is a company and your future self is the CEO.
Ooh, I like that.
How would your future self assess your current commitments and priorities? Would they approve of how you're spending your time and energy?
Probably not. I think my future self would fire me for wasting too much time on social media.
It's all about aligning our actions with our long-term goals. What are the things that will truly move the needle in the direction we want to go?
So step 1 is to define our purpose. And step 2 is to eliminate anything that doesn't support that purpose. What's step 3?
Step 3 gets into mindset. It's about moving from needing to wanting to knowing.
Okay, this sounds like we're getting into the realm of manifestation. Am I right?
You're picking up what I'm putting down. The book talks about Dr. David Hawkins' work. He created this map of consciousness that outlines different levels of emotional development.
A map of consciousness. That's intriguing.
The map ranges from those lower levels of consciousness, like shame, fear, and anger, to those higher levels like courage, acceptance, love, and enlightenment.
So it's like a hierarchy of emotions.
Yeah, and each level influences our thoughts and behaviors.
And ultimately, our reality.
You got it. Now, the book argues that the level of needing is rooted in lack. It's a place of fear and insecurity where we're constantly striving for something we feel is missing.
It's like that feeling of never enough.
The next level up is wanting, which is a step in the right direction, but still driven by desire.
Like we've identified what we're missing, but we don't quite have it yet.
Right. But the highest level is knowing. And this is a state of complete acceptance. It's a place of peace and gratitude where we trust that we already have everything we need, even if it hasn't fully manifested yet.
It's like having unshakable faith in ourselves and in the universe.
Exactly. And the book says that gratitude is key to elevating our consciousness from wanting to knowing.
So the more grateful we are, the closer we get to that state of knowing.
Yes. And it suggests this really powerful visualization practice. Imagine yourself already living the life of your future self. Feel the joy, the gratitude, the fulfillment. Embody that confidence and certainty that what you desire is already yours.
Oh, I love that. It's like we're sending a message to the universe. I'm ready. Bring it on.
Exactly. So we've got to define our purpose, eliminate distractions, and cultivate a mindset of gratitude and knowing. What do you think comes next?
I'm guessing it's time to take action. What's step 4?
Step 4 is to ask for exactly what you want, without shame or hesitation.
Ooh, this sounds like we're tapping into the law of attraction.
It's definitely connected to that principle. The book tells the story of Amanda Palmer. She's a musician who built a really successful career by embracing the art of asking.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me about Amanda.
She started out as an independent musician, touring with her band, connecting with fans on a really personal level. And she wasn't afraid to ask for help, whether it was finding a place to practice or just recommendations for good restaurants in a new city.
She was just being authentic, vulnerable.
Exactly. And as her career grew, she took her asking to a new level. She actually decided to give her music away for free and rely on crowdfunding to support her projects.
Wow. That's bold. It takes a lot of trust to do that.
But it worked. Her fans rallied around her, and she was able to create the music she loved without being beholden to a record label.
So it's not just about asking for what we want. It's about cultivating those authentic connections, building community.
You got it. And it reminds us that people are often willing to help if we just have the courage to ask.
That's so true. Okay, so we've got to ask for what we want. No shame in the game. What's the fifth step to becoming our future selves?
Step 5 is all about streamlining our lives. It's about automating and systematizing those everyday tasks to free up mental energy for more creative and strategic work.
Working smarter, not harder. I like that.
The book talks about inevitability thinking. It's about setting up systems and processes that make success almost inevitable.
It's like building a machine that runs itself.
You got it. So we can automate the things that can be done on autopilot, like paying bills, scheduling appointments, even managing our email. That way we can free up our mental bandwidth for the things that really matter.
The things that only we can do.
Exactly. Like creative problem solving, strategic planning, and building relationships. And the book also emphasizes the power of outsourcing.
Delegating. That's something I need to get better at.
It's so important. We don't have to do everything ourselves. Trying to do it all can really hold us back.
So it's about building a team, leveraging the expertise of others.
And that creates more time and space for us to focus on our strengths, on those things that we're uniquely gifted to do.
Okay, so we've got to automate, delegate, and streamline our lives. What's step 6?
Step 6 is all about taking control of our calendars. It's about scheduling time for those things that are most important to our future selves.
This goes back to what we talked about earlier, that our schedules reflect our priorities.
Exactly. If we're not making time for those activities that will help us become our future selves, well, then we're not really serious about it, are we?
Ouch. That's a truth bomb.
The book uses the classic big rocks in first analogy. You know that one.
Oh, yeah. It's about putting those most important things in first so they don't get squeezed out by all the little stuff.
Right. So we need to identify our top 3 priorities, the things that are really aligned with the goals of our future selves. And then we need to block out time in our calendars for those activities, make them non-negotiable.
So it's not enough to just have a to-do list. We have to actually make time for those things.
Yes. And it requires a shift in mindset. We need to view our time as a valuable resource that we can invest in those activities that will truly move the needle in our lives.
I love that. It's about reclaiming ownership of our time, our lives.
And the book contrasts 2 perspectives on time: Newtonian time and Einstein time.
Newtonian time and Einstein time. Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the difference?
Newtonian time is that traditional view of time as linear, fixed. We have a limited amount of it, and we're always racing against the clock. This can create a lot of stress and urgency.
Like we're always running out of time.
But Einstein time recognizes that time is actually relative. It's influenced by our perception and our choices.
So it's not about how much time we have. It's about how we choose to use it.
Exactly. The book encourages us to adopt that Einsteinian perspective on time, recognizing that we can actually create more time for those things that matter by making conscious choices.
So it's about shifting from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance.
You got it.
Okay, so we need to schedule our future selves and reclaim ownership of our time. What's the 7th and final step to becoming our future selves?
The final step is all about action. It's about embracing imperfection and getting things done. The book encourages us to aggressively complete imperfect work.
Done is better than perfect. I needed to hear that.
We can get so caught up in perfectionism, it can really hold us back from taking action and making progress.
It's like we're afraid to put our work out there if it's not flawless.
And that fear can keep us stuck. So the book encourages us to shift our focus from perfection to completion. It's about getting things to about 80% done and then shipping it out into the world.
The 80% rule, I've heard of that.
It's all about progress over perfection. And it's about recognizing that we can always improve later. And the book also talks about Parkinson's law. Have you heard of that one?
Vaguely, for me.
Parkinson's law states that work expands to fill the time allotted for it. So if we give ourselves 3 years to complete a project, it will probably take 3 years. But if we set a much tighter deadline, we'll find a way to get it done much faster.
So we've got to create that sense of urgency for ourselves.
Exactly. And every time we complete a project,